And welcome back to another episode of Coaching with the Bible. This is episode 157, season 3, episode 48, a New Year holiday special edition. Our topic is manifesting. Just at the outset, I really hope your week was better than that of all of us suffering New York Jets fans. Oh man, like to immediately have to go right into option B, and that's suddenly like your option A, and that option B looks a lot like the option A from last year. Whew, that is rough, and admittedly, it was rough. If you don't know what I'm talking about, really simple. You have something that was building up for 4 or 5 months with the New York Jets, the football Jets, the bringing of the superstar legendary quarterback to lead their team to the promised land, to a championship that's eluded them for a bazillion years. And then 4 plays into the season, that person is lost for the season to a ruptured Achilles tendon. That is the agony of defeat pulled from the jaws of victory. The high and the low in an instant. It took all of 75 seconds. So I hope your week was better than that. And I sure as anything hope that the coming year is better than that for you. With that said, I want to jump in right away to this idea of manifesting. I know it's a hectic day, a busy day for a lot of people who are celebrating this weekend. So let's get right to it, manifesting. Manifesting, admittedly, is something I'm a little bit skeptical about, but I do think there are variations of it which do sit better with me. Manifestation is the idea that you can bring a positive outcome into your life by simply claiming it as your own and believing it will happen. That's what this idea is. So you want to be rich, you want to be wealthy, you want to make $1 million, you start speaking it into existence, you start thinking about it and claiming it, and the way when you read about it in all of the literature that's out there, it's supposed to just snap your fingers and happen. And to me, like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure that's how anything exactly works. The reason I was thinking about manifestation or manifesting at all over the last 2 weeks, I've been spending a lot of time the last number of weeks preparing to lead the prayer services in our synagogue over the next couple of days on the high holiday. And preparing means reviewing the text and reviewing the tune and reviewing special tunes that are brought in and making sure that everything flows and that it's meaningful and significant and inspiring and empowering for people, and effectively a good experience. And when you think about prayer a little bit, I think a lot of us think that when we pray or believe that when we pray, we're asking God for something to happen in our lives. So we'll say it a couple of times, we'll say it a few times, we'll say it with a lot of meaning and very heartfelt, maybe with tears, or maybe with a smile, maybe with some joy in our lives. However we're going to do that. And then, again, snap your fingers and miraculously it happens. It's like it doesn't work that way, right? I don't think that's how anyone actually thinks it actually works. And so it's sort of a little bit surprising to me that a lot of literature, a lot of people talk about the idea that if I write it down a few times during the day, or I write it down 3 times and then 6 times and then 9 times, there is a theory called the 3-6-9 method of journaling multiple times a day about your destiny and your intentions. And there are people, highly successful people, who have done this and it's worked for them. So this idea that this actually sort of works, but it's hard to just sort of accept. You're not going to sit in a chair somewhere one day and just sort of manifest into existence perfect health, abundant joy and happiness, love, laughter, wealth. I just by sitting still, it doesn't sort of sit so well with me. And so what I sort of come to understand, and I think I understand this about prayer as well, and that's why it's sort of been on my mind, is that as much as I've talked about, and we've talked about here, that action is motivation, or the greatest motivator is doing and not simply just thinking, or that the emotions and feelings follow the actions, which we've talked about as well. There is a component of this which I think is very accurate. And to sort of think about it in the context of a very famous quote, so there's a quote from the book called The Secret, and this is like sort of a jumping off point a little bit with respect to that, is this quote, and I think it's really interesting. It talks about this. It says as follows: you are a magnet. When you become a magnet of wealth, you attract wealth. When you become a magnet of health, you attract health. When you become a magnet of love, you attract love. When you become a magnet of joy, you attract joy. You must become the magnet of whatever it is you want to bring it to you. Magnet comes first. Manifestation is second. Manifestation is the effect of the magnet of you. I think that's actually perhaps closer to it, but I think it's maybe even more than that. Which I love that quote. I really do. I think it's a really, really interesting quote. I really think that there's a lot of power in the idea of the laws of attraction, or the idea that you can be sort of magnetized to some degree to attract all of these positive things around you. But I think ultimately then it is really more about action, and that it starts maybe with how we think about it, and then it actually lead it all the way through. And only when we start to sort of implement and execute is anything simply really possible. And the reason is because we've sort of redefined the line that we're taking and how we're thinking, maybe to the exclusion of a lot of other things, and we've zoned in on something very specific. And so when you take a magnet and you turn that magnet specifically towards something that it's interested in attracting, the likelihood of its attracting it goes up. And so, to quote another quote from Dr. Wayne Dyer, who I've mentioned a few times, you create your thoughts create your intentions, and your intentions create your reality. Let's add one more. They also create your actions. They also create your plan. They also create your method. They also create your attempts. They also create your failures, and they also create your learnings. And I think all of that is connected and related and part of the idea of manifestation. And so when we speak it out loud, I'll give you an example from my own life. For a long time, I've been sort of thinking about this, dreaming about this idea of owning a home in the north of Israel. I may have mentioned this once before. This is like something that's in my head. I don't know why, but it's a thing. And for a long time, nobody knew about it. But like the last year, I mentioned it out loud, the idea of this desire, this dream to own a home in the north of Israel. Okay? So I have like an idea about what it would look like and maybe where it would be, and that to me is sort of claiming it into existence with the hope, and that's the key word here, I think, which is unhelpful, is hope that it actually comes to be. But the reality of it is, and I know this and from coaching and working with people, that if that's all it is, it's just me saying it out loud and putting it out into the ether and hoping that luck will strike me and that it'll happen, I don't think that's actually going to work. What actually does work, though, is by having that as an intention, or having that as a thought, or having that as sort of maybe a goal even. So then it redirects traffic around the things that you do and you don't do. It reconsiders what you're going to focus in on, or what kind of work you're going to do, and how lucrative you're looking to make things be around the work that you're doing. And then it comes into existence. So it effectively creates the reality by virtue of going through that process of working from the mind into a sort of a plan, into intentionality, and then into action and execution, and then hopefully success. And so where Emerson has this famous quote of, once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. So I think that's true, but I think it leaves out half the story. So making the decision is super important, but it's probably not everything. And so we have to sort of think about this, and it's what I've been thinking about a lot as we come into the high holidays in the new year. So for me, a lot of my preparation work is leading up to the high holidays, leading up to leading the services, because one, the services are happening and I'm standing up there in that role as effectively the cantor, but I am no cantor. I don't have the time, the headspace to sort of think about my own things at that time. I'm very focused on what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to, give this experience and give this moment to everybody around me and make it meaningful for everybody else. And so the time is sort of spent in advance, and that's sort of what I'm thinking about and focusing. Where do I want to manifest this year? What do I want to have happen for me? What am I claiming to be my truth? And so it effectively for me, and I mentioned this I think way back early on in Coaching with the Bible, is not just sort of having an intentionality. I do say these things out loud because I need to hear them, and I also need other people to hear them, and hope that the idea then it helps them to conspire with me to make this the reality. But I go further than that with some of these things. I mentioned the term not just visualization, but visualization, I think is the term, visualization, where I'm not just sort of thinking it out and I'm thinking through the details. Maybe I'm taking active steps towards what it's going to be. So maybe I'm looking at the example I brought before, I'm looking at certain communities in the north. Maybe I'll go drive by one of them. I'll take a tour of a house in one of the communities. I didn't do that, but maybe that would be the idea, because that takes it from an intentionality, from a visualization into something physical and real that I can touch. And it makes sort of the plan ever more present and real in what it is that I'm trying to do. So the visualization of what I'm trying to do is a greater manifestation of what I'm thinking about, what I'm hoping for. Because as I said before, hope is not a strategy, and neither is luck a strategy. So we have to make the effort here. We have to put the intention out there, but also have to put the effort out there as well to have that happen for us. So it's important to also appreciate that these manifestations, these things that we're trying to claim to be true for our own lives, they can be massive, and they should be massive. The only limits we place on ourselves is something we've talked about before. It's this limiting beliefs of things maybe perhaps that we don't deserve to have this in our lives. And so we diminish what it is that we believe we should have or deserve, and by virtue of that, we then act and operate and execute at a diminished level based on a limiting belief that we have established and we have put in that isn't actually true. And so it's important that when we're doing these sort of exercises of manifestation, that we do it in a very grand form. Part of it is to get beyond ourselves and bigger than ourselves, but part of it also is to appreciate that the limit is not actually a limit, and that there is no limit. And we can really do way, way much more, but for the limiting beliefs that we have. So the visualization is part of that, limiting beliefs is part of that problem, and the idea then that we deserve or have this in the world. Now, I've mentioned this before as well. If we don't have that confidence or that self-belief in ourselves, then, I mentioned it too, we should borrow it from somebody else. You can borrow it from friends and family, people closest to you. Ask them to give you some of that confidence, talk to them about this and hear it from them, and maybe that will instill the confidence in you. Or it can come from, incontrovertible evidence that you actually deserve what it is that you're manifesting or should be manifesting. So you're actually highly successful. You're actually really good at what you do. You actually are impactful in the world and do have a significant and meaningful impact on the things around you. And you are deluding yourself by having the limiting belief that you don't deserve what you actually deserve. And so you can borrow that self-confidence from somebody else, or you can simply look at the data and see what's the actual truth about you and your actions and your accomplishments and your success, and maybe then what it is that you can and actually deserve in life. So have confidence in yourself, if you can. Borrow some of that confidence from other people, if necessary. Look at the data and pull from there and cull from there something that is impossible to argue with. And the last part of that is also to give confidence to others. No reason not to. They need it too. They deserve to have it as well. So share some confidence with them. So in this manifesting space, you come across a lot of the different concepts that we've talked about over the course of the last 3 years. And as we come to this sort of moment on the new year, when we're standing in prayer or we're in contemplation, and we're spiritually sort of holding in a moment for ourselves. So if that's sort of the person you are, so then that's the opportunity to sort of really stop, breathe, think, manifest, intentionalize, and then execute upon in the following. So it's okay to sort of go into the holiday, let's say, without any of that, but it wouldn't be okay to come out of the holiday with none of that either. So you have to sort of begin to process here and some standing, again, solemnly in that space of prayer. So these are the times when you can think and maybe have some clarity and some quiet in the mind, a little bit of peace of the mind to be able to think about some of these things and put them into order and then get moving on them as well. If you want to go so boldly as to announce it to your friends and family at the table or around when you're sitting around together, by all means go right ahead. That is perhaps the beginning of the manifestation coming into being. But if that's all it is you just sort of spouting out loud, that's probably not going to do it. But the last thing I'll mention here is the idea here that it should be one thing. Let's think about one thing. Let's not do like manifesting 50,000 things. I don't think that actually works. Or even manifesting 5. Let's pick one. What do we want to have more of in our lives for the coming year? This is our big takeaway from today. And that's the question that we should be thinking about. What's the one thing that we want to be bringing more of into our lives for the coming year? Health, wealth, holiness, happiness, joy, laughter, success, financial, impact, whatever it may be. I would say that's the exercise that's worth doing. That's the question to be thinking about. What's the main focus of the coming year? If the year is over right now, next year, and I accomplished X, then I would have done a lot. What is that one thing? That's where I want to leave you with Coaching with the Bible for this week. We start to think about these things. We start to work through it. This is the time and the space and to really come through it effectively, significantly, impactfully, meaningfully, with a plan and a direction for what's coming into the future. To end as always with a quote. Well, first before that, wish everyone, you and yours, family, friends, a happy, healthy, sweet, meaningful, joyous, content, impactful, significant year ahead. Here's the quote. To accomplish great things, to accomplish great things, we must not only act, but also dream. Not only plan, but also believe. That is Coaching with the Bible for this week. Wishing you all a happy, happy new year. See you soon.